Hello, beautiful souls. Welcome to this week's Karma Cards. We had such a massive turning point yesterday that it literally changed the color of my hair. But seriously, we did have a big turning point yesterday. It was the super full moon in Pisces plus lunar eclipse yesterday, and it happened at 25 degrees, which is talking about a overcoming obstacles and making your way to success is one of the meanings of the number 25. And so there is a turning point. Now, the team yesterday, and I cannot wait to share it with you in my upcoming podcast, but the team came through with not only the Arcturians and not only the Syrians, but they came through together in a beautiful channeling that I cannot wait to share on my podcast with you. And they were talking about this turning point energy because eclipses are portals. And the way the Arcturians talked about it is a turning point. Yesterday's full moon was about endings, and a pretty significant ending, actually, because we haven't had a full moon lunar eclipse in Pisces in 18 years. So this is coming around again. It's sort of the end of an 18-year story, if you will, and moving into a whole other dimension. And so I wanted to share that with you because there are some big things culminating for us in our personalized lives, big things ending. And you have a lot of say in what that is. There are some things in your life that are naturally trying to leave, evolve, or change. And something I wanted to share with you that they said yesterday is, a lot of people want things to stay static, or if you're having an experience, maybe one that you're particularly enjoying, you want it to stay there until you're done. But a lot of times we are meant to keep evolving into who we are. And some of our experiences are not meant to be a lifetime experience, but rather a season. And they're talking about the turning of the seasons, which is also so appropriate because the season is about to turn on Sunday from the summer into the fall equinox. And so we are literally coming up to a season change in the northern hemisphere. In the southern hemisphere, you're going into your spring. So we're having that shift of season and asking us to lean into it and embrace it rather than to resist it. If something is trying to leave, there's a good reason. And many times we're looking at the leaving, and especially if it doesn't feel like it's on our terms, we might feel upset about that or feel like this is being taken from us, when really it's making space for something new to come in. There's another important chapter that is ready to play out, and there needs to be space for it. So if you're noticing in your life that things are changing, if they're changing, even if it's not something that you think is going to change, try to go with it. Try to lean with it. And that actually takes me into the message from the team. And the message from the team is about standards, spiritual standards. So I have a story about my hair because it's kind of obvious, isn't it? It's kind of obvious that something's different here. Now, this is kind of close to my natural hair color, if you want to know the truth. That's probably what it really looks like. But I love having blonde hair. It's kind of my thing. And so I had booked an appointment because I wanted to put a few lowlights, just a few lowlights into my hair. But it was a new salon and a new stylist who wasn't familiar with what my hair would do. And a few lowlights turned into all over color, which I will say that from an ego standpoint, and this is where we're going to get to standards, I promise. From an ego standpoint, my ego lost it, right? It identifies with seeing myself a certain way and being very attached to what was already happening. And again, seasons and things changing, right? So, of course, when the ego doesn't get what it wants, it throws a little temper tantrum. It wants to throw a fit. Like for me, the tears started welling up because I went in with a certain idea and came out looking very different. And there was a part of me that wanted to well up and cry and panic about the fact that I feel like this wasn't what I wanted. But then I went to my spiritual standards and I really thought about the person working with me. Now, the person working with me, when she saw the look on my face, because she wasn't expecting it either, she also panicked. And that was something that she held together very well, but I could sense it that she was panicking. And I went into my spiritual standards, and one of my spiritual standards is treat other people how you'd like to be treated, and to assume the best intentions in others, right? And so going into that space, my heart was very big and compassionate, and understanding that sometimes mistakes happen, things don't calculate the way that we want them to, and rather than have the panic attack that was welling up inside of me, I wanted more to let this person know that I understood. And at one point I even said, you're going to be really great at this because we had this challenge together, because of the intricate thing I was asking for, and how the color combination had to come out. And it was so funny because she paused and she went, "Oh yeah?" I said, "Yeah, you're going to be incredible at this, because obviously when we're working towards something and we're trying to perfect it, if we don't know the formula yet, we're going to make mistakes. But those mistakes are not meant to hinder us. Those mistakes are actually going to improve us. They will give us more information. And as we move forward and pursue it again, we will have that information in our belt and be able to fine tune and hone in on something even better." But my point is that the spiritual standards I want are those of compassion, understanding, forgiveness, and, being able to giggle about it later, because after all, it is just hair, right? And I want to share that with you because your team is asking you, what are your spiritual standards? Because moving out of reactivity is one of the turning points that we're leaving. We don't have to be reactive. We can be responsive. And the difference between the two is reactive is an unconscious knee-jerk response or reaction rather. And response is a conscious and a decided perspective. So we're assessing it, and then we're considering how do I want to respond? How do I want to be in this state? And so they're asking us to think about this today in our own lives as we're moving through this turning point, and we have shifted. We have gone through a type of portal energy, and we will continue to go through this portal through October 2nd when the second eclipse happens. And so there's a turn and another turn. It's like half a turn here, half a turn there. So as you're moving through these portal energies, upgrading your life, and things do fall away, but new things come in. What are your spiritual standards? What are the things that you would like to see in your own behavior and how you move forward? Is integrity something that's really important to you? Authenticity, accountability, responsibility, calm and patient and measured responses. What is it that are your spiritual standards that you're working towards? And then when life presents you with a challenging situation, then you know what it is you are intending to maintain. And I feel like many of you've got these. It's not about making them. I think you have your spiritual standards. I feel like the message is more about be conscious of those. Keep them kind of like review your own spiritual standards of the kind of integrity your soul would like to live in. Review those consciously, and now know that as you're moving through this window and you're going to be challenged with maybe an ending or maybe a shift you didn't see coming, based on your own spiritual standards, how will you approach this? How will you respond to what is coming? And knowing that whatever's happening, even things that appear to be mistakes, they are serving you in some way. So rather than assuming the worst about a situation, like if a job ends or a relationship ends or a business venture fails, rather than looking at that and seeing it as somehow a negative, but rather, okay, if this is ending for a reason, then what is it making space for in my life? I'm going to allow myself to recognize that this is empowering me. It is not disempowering me, because my spiritual standard is one that the universe has my back and is conspiring in my favor. And all I have to do is stay in alignment with my spiritual standards. So with that, let's look at this week's karma cards and get more of the message. If you're new to karma cards, let me quickly show you how these work. I've got 3 decks here: planets, signs of the zodiac, and the houses of astrology. And I've already asked my team, what is the message you have for me this week? And I've got 2 sets of answers, a set in red, which are action related, and a set in blue, which are outcome related. And the way that you play is you tune in with that beautiful intuition of yours and feel, what is the message you need this week? Are you looking for action related guidance, or are you looking for how things resolve? And of course, you can always choose both. And while you are choosing, let me tell you the timing for this reading. This reading is for September 18th through the 25th. And the flavor of this reading, well, we've got Pluto, which is the purge empowerment planet. So Pluto is always working towards our empowerment, and many times it will purge from our life what is not empowering us. So that sudden endings thing is definitely connected to a Pluto philosophy. In the sign of Leo, which is activating our leadership, it's activating our integrity and our sovereignty. So here's those spiritual standards. And the 9th house is also activated, which is the house of mental expansion. So this is talking about living from your higher mind, where those spiritual ideals and standards hang out. For those of you who are choosing action, your spiritual action at this time is to resurrect leadership as if it came from God. Right? So the beautiful thing here is we're talking about our spiritual standards. These are the hierarchy of our behavior that we would like to live at. And what it's telling you here is that these spiritual standards are set by you at the higher self level, the soul level. And these are sort of the components of your higher self, letting you know, this is how I operate. So this is self-directed leadership. Nobody outside of you is telling you what your spiritual standards are. Where these are coming from is the highest part of yourself. And so this is where they're asking you to recognize the leadership that lives within and act like it came from God, because it literally does. Mental action at this time, get to the heart of the creativeness of the philosophies and laws involved. So what your higher self wants you to know is that you're co-creating these standards with them, meaning your higher self is sending you the impulse, the impetus, and the frequency of what your higher self is. You're the one interpreting those signals. So you are the one feeling that energy and going, you know what, being in integrity with my word and deed is so important to me. I know that's one of my spiritual standards. Or practicing compassion is so key to who I am at a fundamental level. I know that's one of my standards. So what they want you to know is that it's not being told to you. You are, from this level of yourself, interpreting the frequency of your higher self. So it is a co-creative act, because there are many facets to what your higher self is sending you. But the ones that are resonating the most for you at this time are the ones that you are interpreting to mean compassion or love or patience or what have you. Physical action at this time, do or die. You must do what you want and do it in a big way. So the beautiful part is, if you're sitting there worrying about, well, what if I'm not hearing what my higher self has to say? Interpret the energy, claim it, right? You are creating this at the same time. So it's more about tuning in, and you're like, when do I feel most like myself? Right? That's the creative way. When do I feel most like myself? I feel most like myself when I am compassionate. I feel most like myself when I'm understanding. I feel most like myself when I can laugh at life's mistakes, so I can be in a place of joy and lightheartedness. I feel most like myself when I'm in integrity. I feel most like myself when I'm being self-directed. Whatever those are, I want you to ask that question. Where do I feel most like myself? And what is the quality I would feel, right? If you are a person who has this beautiful amount of patience and you really feel like, yeah, that represents me well, that's a point in which you feel most like yourself. Boom, there's one of your spiritual standards. When you can hold space for someone, when you can be open-minded about something, that might be where you feel most like yourself. There's another one, right? So take the time to consider, where do I feel most like myself? I feel the most homeostasis in my body, mind, and soul when I achieve this state. A lot of times, the reason that they're going over this with us so much is that a lot of times people perceive these to be principles that are, well, like a lot of our religious doctrine has these values in place, and there's nothing wrong with that. But when you are interpreting that you are being told how to behave versus what feels the most aligned to you, it hits you differently. So this is why it's saying, at this time, it's not a text you need to refer to. It's not a sermon you need to refer to, or laws. It's really within myself. When I am blank, I feel the most like myself, and that you will know as a spiritual standard. Now let's look at outcomes for Pluto in Leo in the 9th house of mental expansion. Your spiritual outcome at this time is the need for control of self-confidence to create spiritual values. All right, so what I'm getting from this part of the reading is they're saying that some people might feel like that's blasphemous to set their own spiritual standards. And I just would love you to sit with that if that's you for a moment. Why is it wrong to determine what your own spiritual standards are? It is the most resonant, it is the most true to your soul to be able to interpret your soul and understand how to live in resonance with it. So if you find that you're lacking the confidence, like maybe you're like, okay, well, I will identify them, but I don't know if that's what puts me in soul alignment. There might be a need to like really try to clamp down or get verification from the outside world at this time, if that's you, and that's okay. Just know that that comes from a lifetime of being told outside validation is necessary. When it comes to something as personal, as deeply personal as your own values and standards, hopefully you can see you have the inner authority to set the bar for yourself. You can be inspired by somebody else. You can be inspired by scripture or law or philosophy that is out there, absolutely. But be sure that it's resonating with you, where you're like, again, when I am in compassion, I absolutely resonate with my soul self. And then you'll know it's your own spiritual standard. Mental outcome at this time, an obsession with taking a chance on long-range thinking and travel. Long-range thinking and travel, this just has to do with, again, the higher mind. So one of the ways you can interpret that is the higher mind is like much, much, much higher than you. It's not something you can reach from this plane, but rather you must align to yourself, go inward, meditate, raise your frequency, and go up to make contact with it. So that's the long range thinking and travel. An obsession with taking a chance on it. Again, there's some interesting phrasing here. The obsessive part comes from Pluto, right? Pluto loves to dig deep and get to the heart of things, and it's relentless until it gets there. So there might be this sort of like, can I must dig deep inside myself to find if I have the permission to claim these standards as not only enough for me, but literally the standards of my soul. So for some people listening to this, it might cause you to really reflect on that part. Can I even claim the standards of my soul? That's a fair question to ask, and I think important. If that's you, if you're struggling to believe you can claim that, then please do that research, deep dive, and feel into it, of course. I think for many people out there, this is a phrasing that they're going to be, well, isn't that just my values? Isn't that just the standards I have? And again, What makes it a soul standard is how it resonates, how much you feel like yourself. And I mean at a deep level where you feel so in alignment, you feel calm. And there's no question if I'm doing the right thing. You know you're doing the right thing because it is you. It's so you. So again, it's not a question of accuracy or permission. It's a question of resonance. Physical outcome, a power struggle resulting from the impressiveness on what is to be shared. So the impression I'm getting here is that you might find that something that really resonates deeply on a soul level might come up against some standards maybe you were brought up with, or maybe are shared with you in, like, again, like a religious setting or something. For some people, might really come up against that and create a sort of conflict as you go inward, not because it's wrong, but because your set of standards might be slightly different than that which you are told you should have. And again, I know I'm hitting this over the head, but resonance is the key. Resonance is the key, right? Like, for example, let's say, and then I'm just trying to make up something so random that we could all be on the same page. Let's say the value out there that you were told to have is a fixed mindset. Like, once you get something, that is the answer. Do not question it. Let's say that's a standard that was given to you. But when you go into yourself and go, okay, is this a soul standard for me? You find no resonance. You're like, no, that feels wrong. In fact, my very nature is to question and be curious and to seek more information, not less. In fact, as soon as I know something, I want to go see it in the world. I want to see if there's anything that challenges that or grows that. And that might be more of a standard for you. So you might go inward and go, oh my gosh, no, a fixed mindset kind of opposes my natural energy. And my natural energy is to have an open mind, or is to question and try to stretch myself out of this very limiting belief. Well, that could cause a little bit of internal conflict, especially if, let's say, this is a standard that you were given growing up and that was the rules of your household. Do not question. Once something is told to you, that is the answer. There is no other answer. Do not question it. And so you might have this inner need to be obedient because that helped you growing up in that situation and it kept you safe. But now, as an adult in your own life, you find that that very thing that you were told to value hinders you so much, and it doesn't match. And when you go inward, you find the exact opposite is actually much more true to your soul. This could cause sort of a crisis of conflict internally, and that's understandable. And they said that's part of this release process, because the idea here is to get into more alignment with who you are at a soul level. And sometimes the things that we are given or told should be our standards, or are not things that are quite a match to us, or we have a different interpretation or a slightly different take on that. We want to see it differently, but we have a hard time giving ourselves permission to do it. And so we tend to live at odds with ourselves, where we're trying to appease the external world and match what it told us to, and yet our internal world has an absolutely different take and feels stifled. And so when that happens, you're always feeling like you've done something wrong, even though you haven't. And so this week we're being asked to explore our soul standards. You might find that, there's a lot of them I live in, and this one wants more attention, or, this is another level I hadn't quite added yet. That might be your journey this week. Others might go into a deeper dive where they really see, wow, there's a few things in my life that I thought were the things that I'm supposed to do that are right. But when I actually go into myself, I find that I'm really conflicted or constricted, or I always feel bad even when I do the right thing. And so I'm struggling with that. I'm having that crisis of conflict. Just know it's just showing you who you more authentically are and giving you the opportunity to see it, to connect with it, to try and understand it, and if you're ready, to heal it. And with that, I'm giving you so much love. I might be more blunt next week, but I'm enjoying this for now. And I'm going to see you soon. Mwah.